Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Barbara Ditlow. And she is, I don't know how to say it, but she does human design readings. And um, I put a little bit on the post yesterday, but basically, some of the information she shared in my reading changed my life drastically because it helped me see that there were things in my relationship that wasn't able, like I couldn't change it. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix it and change it. And because there's like something in our makeup, in our design, from the information that she looked at and gathered in the way that they do it in that modality, that I basically just couldn't shift and change between me and my partner. So thank you for coming on, Barbara. And thank you. So I want to ask you to first introduce yourself a little bit more, and then tell us what human design is.
Okay. I was invited I'm a projector. There are 4 types, and I'm a projector. And I was invited into human design about 18 years ago. And I was able to work directly with Ra, who received revelation. And up until then, I had different careers. And I'm sure many of the people watching will find in their life there'll be many what appears to be different career employments. Really, it's just aspects of fulfilling your life purpose. So the idea that you're going to do one thing and focus your whole life, some people maybe, but most of us have an experiential way where we have to go through a process of many different relationships, jobs, to really understand more or less our path in life. So when I met Ra, it radically changed my life because at the time I was doing multiple things. I was a real estate agent, I was teaching yoga, I was doing human design readings, plus I also was acting as a contractor renovating houses. And when he read my chart, he said, "Barbara, this is all very interesting, but you'll have to drop it all." So at the time I thought, whoa, who is this person? But as I got more into the courses, I could see that all of us have what appears to be a choice. Do we lead a life that fits us, that makes us feel that we're fulfilling our purpose? Or do we always feel that we have to apologize or keep looking or trying to understand because nothing really sustains us? And so working with him, and I also worked directly with Eckhart Tolle, both born the same year, and approaching awakeness from 2 different roads, I felt that human design really gave the individual unique imprint, and it transformed my life. So that's how I got into it. I was invited into it and began to understand deeper nuances in it, and particularly in relationships, because we're not isolated beings. We're always in relationship to a friend, a job, the planets, but also more profoundly, the intimate relationships of family, lover, or mother-child, whatever. So that's a little bit about how I got into it. And
Thank you.
so human design is a revelation. It was received by a man in 1987 from January 3rd to January 10th. It became a imprint over 8 days. The person who received the imprint, Robert Krakauer, he was then called Ra-Uru-Hu. It's very interesting. There was a crystal implanted in his ear, and that's the who part, Ra-Uru-Hu. And the crystal, you could almost say, is like a chip that Elon Musk is talking about, putting a computer chip in our brains so we can process information in a more global way and more accurate. So he had this crystal, and over a 25-year period, this information was unpacked through his teaching of students. It wasn't as though he isolated and wrote things. It had to come through relationships with other people. It's a synthetic body of knowledge that synthesizes the esoteric and the exoteric. And the esoteric would be the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, the chakras. It would also be the Kabbalah, the tree of life, through the Jewish faith. Also would be the I Ching, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, which relate to the 64 codons, genetic encoding. And then also astrology, so that it works with the signs of the zodiac as well. It then also introduces more exoteric, which would be quantum physics. And that's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And also the planetary transits, how that changes you. So it's a very sophisticated, deep body of knowledge. And the design of the human being is to point out to each individual what is conscious and what is unconscious in them. So oftentimes people will look through their life and say, what was I thinking? Why did I do this? Oh, I'm such an idiot. And then you begin to see how you're programmed unconsciously, and you realize, oh, I get it. And this is where, when you were speaking, Holly, as women, oftentimes we're designed to change. We want to improve. We want to make better. We can work through it. We're all one. We can do this. But there are electromagnetic energies that are fixed. You have to totally accept it, try to change it, or you have to walk away, because your whole life could be entangled in this web and never be able to get out of it. And at the end of your life, you say, ah, glad it's over. So that's a little bit about the overview of human design in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you. So when we had our, I'll start here. So Dan and I had a reading with you last year, and at the time Dan was my boyfriend, and so everybody watching, I've given Barbara permission to use our charts and Dan and I as examples in like explaining about the emotional wave today. So we both of us gave consent. So we'll be probably talking about Dan and me. So just our own personal stuff that we went through, and then you can see how it lands for you. When we gave you our information, we had to give you our birthday and I think where we were born and what time we were born. So like you work off of that information, and then you gather it and create this a list, very complicated charts from all of that information. And then you told me things in that session that I knew I was struggling with for 4 years, and just like you told it to me in 90 minutes. And so at that point I was like, wow, this is somehow innately just there, and it's something I can work through and shift consciously, and some of it is not going to change. So do those things to work together. And one of those was one of the biggest ones. I just re-listened to our session so that I could like see where I was at that time and the information. There's so much. And then so there was the emotional wave, plus the fact that Dan was also a hermit and would check out and just leave. So like when his emotions took over. So those two things together didn't work for me, because he would like either try to drag me into his emotions or and make them mine, or he'd just disappear completely. And then I was left holding our life and the business and everything by myself, and that didn't work for my system for many reasons, for reasons in my history and my design. So first, could you explain what is the emotional wave?
Mm-hmm. The emotional wave is a force. It's a frequency that never stands still. So imagine a river. Imagine the flow of a river. And this is why we call it the wave, because there are ripples. The wave, when a wave comes in, it starts, you can't distinguish it. But then all of a sudden, as it builds, you can feel the intensity build up. And then eventually it hits a point where it crests, and then it drops. And so usually what the theory behind this, it's an electromagnetic force that's always moving. And as it moves, it changes your awareness, the way you see something. Now, 51% of the population, based on over 1 million, they're way over millions of people submitting their charts and then analyzing it. About 51% of the people are what we call on the wave. In other words, they're never designed to be 100% clear. Now, clarity doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It simply means that in order to make a decision, you need time. You need time to process this feeling about what's happening. Now I'm going to time out here. There's 49% that are not on the wave. It does not mean that people not on the wave do not have emotions. It doesn't mean that they don't feel. It means that when they're alone, they're calm. They're usually okay. Would you say that's true, Holly?
Yes.
Yeah. But people that are not on the wave, if they're around people who are on the wave, they're very sensitive to this frequency, to this fluidity, because they amplify it, they feel it, and then they take it in their body. Now, when they take it in their body, if that person is on the wave peaking up, they could be the life of the party. They could be enthusiastic. Life is great. But when they dive down, all of a sudden they can pull you into their vortex of depression, melancholy, their rage, their anger. So it goes either way because it's a binary. The height of exhilaration and beauty or the depths of despair and destruction. The key to know is that this wave is so powerful. That's why, Holly, I was so amazed that you were able to distinguish this was the main force, because even analysts don't look at this as a major consideration in doing a chart. Where I look at it is everything. Why? Because I'm open, as you are. And so what happens is when you're open, you are affected by that wave. I want to go back to the wave people. The wave people are designed to feel things that people not on the wave cannot possibly feel. And as Ross said, sexuality is not considered important in human design. It's almost as though it's a genderless science, even though it's came out of the yin, more of the feminine. What is the major differentiations between someone on the wave and someone not on the wave? Because this is where all the problems stem. Here's an example. So Holly, in your situation, you're not on the wave. Both you and Dan share a companionship quality, which is the ability to spontaneously, through your intuition, be aware of danger. You're both survivors. You know exactly what to do because the splenic awareness kicks in and you're going to act. However, Dan has this other ingredient called emotions. So he can't act right away. He's got to feel. If he's down, he may feel, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't like this. He's got to wait until he gets maybe 75% clear of the situation. So let's say with Holly and Dan, you want to act, you want to make a decision in your business, and Dan controls the business decisions because he's got to sleep on things. We call it consult with your pillow, sleep on it. So in the next morning, he can say yay or nay, but here's Holly saying, wait, we got to go. We got to go because you're responding in the moment. Let's go. So then if Dan is on the down wave, you're going to want to fix it. People not on the wave say, what can I do? Come on, you've got to get up. You got to be in a good mood. You can't be down. But what happens is a person on the wave is literally absorbed in it. They don't have any choice. It's something that they have to ride the wave until they get the clarity to say, okay. The challenge comes in as Dan can say, I got the clarity, let's go do it. The next day, though, that wave has moved and he can come back and say, wait, I don't think that was the best decision. Let's do this. And so what happens is there's this Holly who's very intuitive and has got the response, let's go do this. You're riding in the business this up and down, up and down, up and down. The challenge, too, is with the wave, is it's unconscious, which means that people on it are not aware of what's important to them when they're processing it. So oftentimes, if someone who's not on the wave presses them, demands answers, they can either withdraw or become explosive. And if they become explosive, you're going to take it personally because there's an electromagnetic that goes into your body. Describe how it would feel when it would go into your body when it was a negative wave, Holly.
It felt like a lot of heaviness and like I'm being forced something upon me and I couldn't just disconnect and I have to process in his emotion with him. Um, it was like a force engulfing me
Mm-hmm.
and it
And
felt heavy.
yeah, and then you had an electromagnetic. There are four different waves. Dan has the wave of the artist, the melancholy. I'm in the mood, I'm not in the mood. But that wave is really the button pusher. I'm not in the right spirit. I am in the right spirit. This doesn't feel right. This does feel right. It doesn't feel right. It does feel right. You were compromised by by his wave, which meant that you would be unable to really confront the issues in the moment that you would want to confront.
Mm.
You'd have to wait and give time. So what happens is over time in a relationship, people can be very frustrated by that because you become disempowered because within the relationship, the person who controls the decision-making process is Dan. Now, that's neither good nor bad. It's just respect for giving him the time necessary to get clear about something. So oftentimes, Ra would say the best relationships are people on the way, generators. Let's talk just about generators because you're both generators. Both of you on the wave, then it's fantastic. Or not on the wave, fantastic. But when you have this going on, I'll give you another example. Let's say you're in an intimate relationship and you have a fight. It's a fight. And you're a lot of emotions, you're making your stand. I am not going to back down. And then the other person gets upset. You can even get more upset because you're amplifying the wave. And then you come to a resolution, you feel, thank goodness I'm done. Within a day or 2 or 3 days, the same issue comes up because now that person on the wave, the perception has shifted and they see something different. It is true for them. But you're like, what the heck? We already resolved this. Can you
Yeah.
relate to that?
Yeah, in my relationship there was that, and then there was like business choices or just in our relationship, the way we were living, what we were going to do. I'd be 12 steps ahead and think we were on a path, and then I look and he's way back here, and I'm like, all right, now I got to go back and grab him and bring him along with me, or I'm just going. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's and then he would be processing the thing that maybe we handled a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, why are we still here? So it was really hard for me to keep going back into a thing that we had resolved. Or
Yeah,
in my point of view, we had resolved a long time ago.
yes. And that's why business relationships can be very successful with the wave and not the wave, but someone has to be in control. When I say control, the decision maker that has the ultimate decision saying, no, we're going to go in this direction, catch up or not. So the key, and I think that you probably experienced that, is to what point can you balance the differences or do you have to leave? So when you realized that Dan was on the wave and he would be the final decision maker in your relationship because of the need for time or consulting the pillow,
Mm-hmm.
when did you, after the reading, what did you experience when you saw, wow, I'm more even keeled and I'll confront things and in the moment and he's going to take time. What went through your psychology and your body with that revelation? Let's put it that way.
So I was actually aware of all of this before. I didn't have the concept of the emotional wave and knowing that he actually has to be in his emotions. It's not a wrongness, it's just how he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I function in emotions really differently, and I can't keep getting dragged into them with him. Um, and then I was on a path of like moving forward, and um, he was moving behind, and I just kind of got in that moment when you explained the wave, and then that he would have to check out in certain times because he's almost also a hermit.
Mhm.
So he would check out so that he could process and get his clarity, but it will never be clarity. And I'm like 100% clear, let's move. Or time to go. And he's like, but I don't think we can go, something like that. I'm like, we're going to die if we don't go. And he has to process it. I'm like, I was kind of literally dying in the relationship, um,
It's
with
interesting.
sickness in my body. I was having body issues, and health issues. So those were things that were showing up. And I just kind of realized like all of this is from me interacting in his emotions and really losing a lot of me. And when I got that clear and like took my, I think, mental step away, then I was like, okay, now I have this space that I can function from actually moving away.
Mhm. So, so when you say the mental step, that was important
Hmm.
because in human design they say if you make mental decisions, I can change this, I can do that. It will keep you in a pattern that you're familiar with. Now, it's interesting. Astrologically, you're Sagittarius, right?
Hmm.
And Dan's a Leo, right?
Yep.
So astrologically, you'd say, oh, fixed fire, mutable fire. Oh, fire and fire, great. There's a simpatico. But astrology doesn't go into this emotional wave. It can't see it. And so oftentimes people don't know. And that's why it's interesting that you said you were getting sick in your body
Hmm.
because there will be problems because relationships are to wake you up and to understand things better. But when you have a person on the wave and with a person on the wave, they go at it with a real intensity and they resolve things and go on. But it doesn't affect them physically in the same way that a person not on the wave with someone on the wave. You have to learn how to balance that. And usually in an intimate relationship, as you said, you were feeling sick. It was too much energy. It was too much pulling you back that eventually you'd feel, your health is suffering.
Hmm.
That's why oftentimes in therapeutic situations, and you go to the counselor, you'll say, oh, I'm going to die if I stay in the relationship. The therapist may feel that you're over dramatic, or maybe, you're projecting onto your client. But there is a feeling of life threatening challenge if you have someone on the wave and you're not, because you lose your balance, because you're not designed to do that. What you are designed to do, and share with me, when could you stand in your truth and say, I'm okay, I get the difference, this is what I need to do.
When I got clear on the wave and how I didn't play in it the same way, and then made that choice that I need to make these choices for me and not include Dan in it. Like what is going to be the greatest for me? So I made the choice from my own standpoint and took like I don't care what happens with him in this moment. For me and my health, this is what I have to choose and this is what feels good in my gut. I have to move in that direction.
Mm-hmm. And when you were separating or moving or changing things, did you feel more energized? What happened in that transition? Because there's always the crisis of recognition, and then there's a transition from the partnership to facing the fears and moving forward. What was happening for you then?
Um,
Because
Let
you
me
had the
think.
realization, you knew it, you realized you couldn't change it, so you have this realization. But oftentimes people have the realization, they don't act.
Right. So what I did was we had conversations and I told him where I was. I said, I have to end the relationship in the way that it is. Dan and I are actually still great friends. We still spend time together. I still care deeply for him. It's just in relationship, we were not working and in business. So I made the choice then to remove him from my business because we were going to do this together. It was going to be like a couples coaching thing. And so I made the choice that this is my business now and I'm going to do it. And he doesn't have decisions. Like I just kind of removed him from it and said, let's see what we can create on our own in this moment. Maybe
Mhm.
we'll revisit doing it again together again later. But in this moment, this is my business. And that's where I focused. And then I move forward. So I live in my own home and he has his own home and we visit each other sometimes. But
Mhm.
those were things that like choices that we made to make that space separate. And then I took over, I changed to this is my business now.
Mhm.
And then you can create your own business in the way you want to. So that separation was huge. And then it took me, like, there's a process, right? You can become aware, you make the choice. And then it took me some time to like heal that thing that I thought I was going to have. And then I didn't have, and like actually move forward in the business on my own. So there's part of a process in it. And like that choice though was like, okay, well then I'm going to do this because when he's on the wave, I can't wait for him to do our business. If a client's waiting and he has to make choices and sleep on it and have emotions about it, but I just need to support them, then like I'm not going to do the business on my own. He'll check out. He won't be there.
Mhm. So in a way, you felt you were doing the business on your own part already. Is-
Already. But
Yes.
there was a tether because we were supposed to be doing it together.
So beautiful. When you speak of the tether,
Hmm.
oftentimes we talk about destructive relationships and business arrangements where people begin to spin their wheels trying to change the other person or building up resentment and saying, I'm going to follow this goal. I've got this in my head. We're going to work this together. And then what happens is the destruction by blaming and all the words and whatever. So when you had this realization, what I'm hearing is that you felt empowered in your own personal truth,
Hmm.
trust that process of disengagement, but still following your vision, but all of a sudden with that awareness, it was reconfiguring itself.
Yeah. And so just knowing about the wave and how he functions in it and that I'm different, it gave me more compassion for people that actually function in the wave
Mm-hmm.
and live in that and allowance for myself to not have that same what I always thought like stuck in your emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're so stuck there that they're processing and I'm just moving.
Yes.
And so I need the space to be able to move at my pace
Mm-hmm.
and have that be okay. Because I'm like, am I lacking compassion? Do I not understand that like people have emotions?
Mm-hmm.
So for a long and I've received that input, like, oh, you don't have any compassion. I'm just like, no, I understand the emotion. I feel it. And then I understood and I felt it. So now there's nothing left. Like there's nothing left.
Now, what's interesting too about the wave, just putting a nuance to the wave, because the wave is a fundamental issue or imprint that I look at if I do relationship charts or individual charts,
Mhm.
because that colors everything, because that's the decision maker. That's the controls the decision. But then there's also the frequency of what we call your profile. You're a 3-5, so you're designed to see what doesn't work before the other person. You're
Right.
someone who's very practical and it's wired in you, and you'll see it right away. But there's also the need to have it validated. In other words, you'll probably find that you're before other people seeing something. And then you'll look for validation. How can I share with this? How can I do this? Because you're designed to attune to the other person around there and then adapt or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so coupled with that ability, plus being open emotionally, not having the wave, you're going to be very decisive in, okay, we got to change this, let's move on. We got to change this, let's move on. So we call your profile the one that will have the greatest ability to achieve on the material plane. Why? Because you don't get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You tune, you adapt, you move on. And so you're a realist who says, look, these ideas of, yes, love will transcend everything. I'm going to stay in this relationship and work it out. As the realist, you're saying, wait, somehow I'm getting sick, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, you said something about being on the wave. Oh, people love, like, the more charismatic being on the wave, because people love the drama of the wave, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're stuck in your trauma and your drama. And they're like, I love the drama.
They love the drama because it really is, but it's also tragedy too. I always give the example of the Kardashian and Jenner girls because all of them are generators. Only one is on the wave. And when I did the report for them for one of my classes, this was like 8-10 years ago, and their information is posted online, so it's accurate birth information. I looked and I said, Kylie, who is maybe 10 or 11 or whatever, I said, she's going to be the wealthiest because she's the drama queen, because she's on the wave. And so all of them are quite beautiful, good business people, but they don't have that pizzazz and the drama that Kylie has, with the relationships, and is she married, is she not married, what do you do with the masks, with lipstick, all these things. So there's a beauty to the wave. It's sexy. It is charismatic. And it's also very creative. But it's also very destructive. It's oftentimes when you're trying to manifest the secret or manifestation, law of manifestation, different teachers express these concepts in different ways. What Ra says in human design, for your strategy is you'll get a hit, wait to respond and move out toward it. Then the life force, the essence of who you are, will move through and bring to you what you need in the moment. It's always going to be there, provided you're waiting to respond. It takes out all of the negative, I blame and all that. Whereas Dan has to wait and wait and wait, and then eventually the life force will move through with the right timing, and what is correct for him will be there. But oftentimes what happens is when people initiate or think in their mind what something should look like, they prevent the frequency. Their image is a picture, but the frequency is what wants to move through you and manifest in a way unique for you. So the relationship in your head was, it's got to look like this. We're going to work together. We're both going to make quick decisions. We're going to coach couples and all of this. And then all of a sudden, you're like, great.
It's so easy.
And then the frequency came to you and said, okay, honey, you're going to ride this frequency. And then all of a sudden you had to change your relationship. Mm-hmm. Because you were being empowered with your truth and your knowing. And that's what distinguishes you. Why? Because we go into your cross, which is the cross of Eden, your life purpose, which is really getting people back to the state of their own flowering. The Garden of Eden is the oneness, the truth of being yourself. And the apple of good and evil, that's the binary. But you were saying, wait, I've got to get back to my garden to plant my seed. Mm-hmm. And so your whole consciousness, the way that you were working, had to go through the process. But that experience and that whole process of travail, because it's not easy. You love Dan, and he's a good person. It's that you each have different paths. But the beauty of the relationship, when you came together, you discovered something about each other that was latent within the relationship. Then it was revealed, and then you could both restructure your connection in a way that built upon the foundation rather than destroyed the foundation. Mm-hmm. And that's really the art of relationship and partnership.
Yeah. So the way I say is like that relationship ended, and we still do communion because what we're doing now is way more supportive for both of us than what we were doing before. So it's, in my point of view, closer, like we're closer to each other because it's not like a push-pull. I just know when to step away and be okay with that and not be looking for him to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and let him be in his stuff while also being empowered to just move on and do what's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he can just fully ride his waves. He has the space now, and there's not me pulling on or saying like we have to move forward, because he doesn't have to do with me, like so it's way more supportive of each of us. Something else I wanted to say, what you just said, one way that I think, where it's like make a decision and then follow that energy, what you were just speaking of. I do this often in like with my financial stuff. I just kind of I do research and stuff, but when I make a choice, it's like I feel this is the right way to go in my body, and then I make that choice. Most of the time I make the choice and I don't have the money. Like I bought an $80,000 RV, didn't have the money, didn't like, I'm like, I don't know, it'll work out. I did it, and then the money shows up, or I join a program that's maybe like 20 or 30,000. Don't
Mm-hmm.
have the money, but I'm like, this is the way the energy says to go, and then everything falls in line on that path. So I just want to speak to that. That's a way that it shows up in my world, where like I make a choice, not fully supported in that moment, just off of intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then like as I'm going through that process of the frequency flowing, the things fall into place. So
Mm-hmm.
um, there's a lot of, I think, faith in making those choices, right?
Mm-hmm. There's an empowerment
Mm-hmm.
you've experienced through the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you are actually in the frequency by making decisions with your gut response, intuitive gut response, your intuitive gut response. So what's happening is the frequency of, whether you could call it the higher power, the divine force, the prana, the electromagnetic algorithm of the planets, whatever it is, it moves through you with a certain frequency. You're acknowledging it in your body. All you're doing is saying yes or no to it. If you're saying yes, that frequency goes out ahead of you and then begins to lay, yeah, you're going to buy this, we'll pull the money to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not having it stopped by the head, the mind, which reinforces patterns of upbringing, patterns of doubt, patterns of confusion, patterns of, well, do I really need this? Am I being egotistical? Oh, I want to support the planet, so I should really walk and ride bikes. See, there's a whole mentality and narrative that's being pushed in the outer environment that can work against your inner knowing. So even within the groups that you associate with, you all of a sudden could do a frequency that's going against your tribe, your
Mm-hmm.
group. But you're a survivor. See, you're a survivor. So it means that there's a life and death for everything for you, Holly.
I know.
It's, you really feel it in your body strong, because when I saw both you and Dan's, you're both survivors. So even with the conscious uncoupling, as you know, the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
you're both guaranteeing you would survive, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Dan would go through his emotions and then go hermit away and process it that way. But it's perfect for him because that's his fractal. Great wisdom will come from that. He has an extraordinarily unusual profile, which means that he has to protect himself or someone's going to club him over the head if he's not correct,
Mm-hmm.
Not you, you're more out front and center. So exactly, that was a beautiful example of getting the RV
Mm-hmm.
and having the money come. Do you have any other examples on a smaller scale? Because some people say 80,000, I can't do that,
Right. I know. I've gone a little insane with it.
Okay.
I'll just own it. I did it last weekend. I got a Jeep. Not sure how the finances are going to play out, but I did it because it felt so good.
Okay, good.
So we'll see what happens with that. Um, I would say one of the smaller examples is, so right now, you were just kind of speaking to like when I'm in a group,
Yeah.
then the collective, I'm in a coaching community right now, and most of the collective narrative is like completely on board with, it's not to make this political, but like the leftist views on racism. And
Okay.
they're like spouting off and like doing their process and being really in that, however they're functioning in it. And I'm
Uh-huh.
just kind of watching from the outside, and
Mhm.
I'm not participating. So the fact that I'm not participating and I'm following my gut and watching instead, um, it feels like I'm off and removed myself from the group. But
Mhm.
at the same time, if I were to jump in and play with it the same way they do, I would be off. So I'm following in this moment my awareness and watching and just like learning from all the sides. Um, and it feels better when I'm in this because I tried to like go into the narrative
Mhm.
and that didn't feel good. um I don't know if that speaks to like pulling things in, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like how I'm being with this process right now for me, not being on the emotional wave. I'm not seeing it from an emotional standpoint. I'm seeing like this is happening and this is happening, and these are like 7 different things actually going on at the same time. And not most people, but what, 51% of people are seeing it from the emotional standpoint,
Mhm.
and they're like really diving in and processing all their emotions in it.
Exactly. And the beauty of what you said is you're not participating because the frequency is saying no.
Hmm.
It's saying observe.
Hmm.
So the question, there are two questions to ask, let's say with a racist issue. Does joining empower me or disempower me? This is all about self-empowerment. Human design asks one question: are you being empowered or disempowered? The second question is, who is this narrative benefiting?
Hmm.
Who's benefiting from the racist dialogue? It's not the African Americans. It's not the Chinese. It's no race. There's something above this. And you always have to say, who's benefiting from creating a war? This is really a class war, appearing as a race war.
Hmm.
Now, I'm a projector, and my view is always the highest perspective. So I always say, is this empowering me or not? Secondly, who's benefiting it and who's making money off of it? Because that's always any decade, any history, anything. There are always people that you don't see. So I can share something here. We're in a huge change, a transition of what we call the background frequency. We're not going back to where we were. There's a very new environment, and there's a blood sport going on. And to belong to any group and only feel you're belonging because you can't stand alone, you can be vulnerable because we've been on what we call the cross of planning. We're going to the sleeping phoenix, which is waking up from the ashes of your old self in a culture that was kind and supportive to, individual communication, technology. And now we're moving into how do you empower yourself to navigate the uncertainties of every day there's a change. So
Hmm.
that's a great example because as a working with many, many people, I have people that are very active, in different movements. They're
Hmm.
designed that way. It actually empowers them as a leader. So I help in their human design or continued explorations how to benefit from them, how to benefit, how to support it, how to lead. But then there are other people, if they go in and I say, honey, this is not for you. You're going to be eaten up.
Hmm.
Dude, spit out. It's like a bad relationship. It's off to you for waiting and observing.
Thank you. So it's interesting, like this can play out in so many different areas of our life. The who does this narrative support, and am I empowered or disempowered? So
Yes.
that's beautiful. There was something else that you said, and I want to speak to this real quick.
Mhm.
When you said about, it was at the end of our session, that there are 3 things in a relationship to look at. I think that's how you said it. You can correct me when after I explain it. Identify what's going on, and then look at, can we heal it? Like it's so logistical that it makes so much sense to me.
Yes.
Um,
So
and then,
it's basically assess the situation.
mhm,
So you both say, what's going on here? You say, what can we do to change it? So I'm sure you discussed that with Dan, right?
yep, many, many times.
Yeah. The first thing is to assess the issue because usually people don't agree on the issue.
Mhm,
Let's the idea of racism. Some people say systemic racism. Other people say, are you kidding?
mhm,
Affirmative action. You've got this. And it's interesting, the Democratic Party, and I'm an independent, got to put this out there, takes two wings for a bird to fly. We need both sides. So you've got to assess the problem. Sometimes in a relationship, you cannot assess each person since the problem is different.
mhm,
You're the problem, you're the problem, but you were able to assess the problem. Then you look at it and say, can we change it?
right.
Let's try to change it. And then, as you said when we started, you realized you couldn't change the wave.
Mhm,
It didn't mean that you didn't love, let's say, sex, friendship, eating together, but the wave was, whoa. So then you realized you couldn't change it. So then the two other alternatives were, okay, you have to accept it completely. In other words, he's on the wave. I'm going to become transparent. I'm going to let it go through and let it pass.
mhm,
I'm going to do it, no problem. And if you can't accept it, then you have to leave.
mhm.
Because if you stay in it, it's so destructive to you
Yeah.
and the other person, but primarily to you because you have one life and everybody's life is precious. And when I say empowerment, many people get in thought forms, particularly the feminist revolution. I'm a grandmother. So I saw the CIA hire Gloria Steinem to start the feminist revolution to get women out of the families to work in corporate structures for a lower wage. That was the beginning of the 70s, the feminist revolution. A lot of women have lost their soul in that
Mhm,
process because they've been disempowered by not being able to listen to their uniqueness. And particularly when at 38, 40, they hit a very difficult transition. And I hit the transition too. I'm not without the experience of that. But the key is always ask your question, am I being empowered or disempowered by this and why? So those are the three things in a relationship. Why? Because you're in a relationship with your mother, your father, your lover, your children. At some point you have to learn how to keep your integrity in place.
So I know that you actually you are not on the emotional wave, but your son is.
Yes, and in
So
fact, I
can you
live.
talk about navigating when you're not leaving the relationship?
It's interesting because he's also right and I'm left. That's another differentiation, how the mind, like you and Dan both have very receptive minds. You take a lot of information in. I'm very strategic and I'm a projector and I can go quickly. And sometimes I'll say, oh my God, he's so lazy, or oh my God, can he make a decision? Because it's just like this. But then when we have to be in situations where there's a socialization and a wittiness and emotional high, he's there. So
Mhm,
I realized that in the relationship, I have to step away if he's down. It affects me.
mhm,
If he raises his voice, I can feel it in my body, and I'm like, whoa, whoa. Because you don't want to shut this body down. So it means that you're always going to pick it up. So
mhm.
what I do is I do deep yoga breathing. I breathe and I do deep breathing. And then I'll share this one. I was riding in the car with my son and daughter in law. Their generators on the wave, and my granddaughter's on the wave. So they started going at it. And I remember my daughter in law said, stop it. Your mother's in the car and you know she can't take the frequency of the wave. So there's kind of an awareness of me that I
Mhm,
step outside because when it heats up, I want to go in and fix it. I mean, I feel compelled. So now I'm backpedaling unless I'm invited. So I navigate it quite well, but uh, I was in a marriage with someone who had the wave, and I finally ended it because I felt I was going to die in it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was because of the wave, and it was before human design. But it was similar to you, Holly, because going in and out of the marriage for 5 years, when I met Ra and he did a partnership chart, I saw, oh my God, I can't change it. It gave me permission to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Before in my mind, I felt I'm a failure. This marriage has to go on. There's so much abundance in this marriage, but physically I was dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because, like as like you had different modalities under your belt, it's like, why can't I heal this, right? I'm a
That,
I'm a sex and relationship coach, 10 years of training. Why can't I'm failing at something, you know, was
yeah,
a thought that I had.
yes. And, and so when you had that thought, see, oftentimes that can prevent you from moving forward.
Hmm.
For example, uh, there was Harville Hendrix wrote a book with his wife, Big in Relationships in the 80s. I don't know if you're familiar with the book, but it was a seminal book. But because I was in that circuit at the time, they wanted to get a divorce because it wasn't working out, maybe the timing or the cycle that they were in, but they decided not to because it would affect their business.
Hmm.
So most likely they were probably non-emotional or emotional, but they strategically decided that their relationship and their business relationship was more important than their personal relationship. So what they did most likely is left the personal relationship, had their own space,
Hmm.
and then created the business. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works for you. And the narrative will always say there's a right and wrong answer.
Right, right.
And
But
that's what
that's what's beautiful about this is that it's not like you're wrong because you're on the wave, you're wrong because you don't process the emotions enough. It's like we both have this way of being with emotions and we have to allow each other to be in it. And neither one's right or wrong. It's just the way that we process them. So I love that about it. It took off that charge and it just really gave me the permission. Like you said, it gave me the permission, like, okay, so I'm not actually failing. I just am not gonna. And I experienced, I have to leave for 4 years before, yeah, it was 4 years before I had the session with you. And I
yes.
knew I had to go. And then I'd pull myself back in because I'm supposed to be able to fix it. So there was a not listening to myself for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I love that there's just not the wrongness. And whether you stay together and make it work or leave, that's not a wrongness also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just like what's going to be the best for the collective and yourself.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting, what you were saying there, because if I were to describe the background frequency, it's the water that we swim in. It's also the major consciousness field that we all have a little point of attention into, and it expresses itself through us. What's fascinating about that is the background frequency is changing from the commitment to the partnership to the awakening of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see this beginning to happen worldwide, where there's the woke. The woke, I guess, is the PC. It's more tribal, in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the awakened ones
Mm-hmm.
that say, great, if the group is doing that, great for them, good, but I'm an individual, so I'm going to stand over here.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're having is, I call it the bifurcation of one cycle, 400-year cycle ending, a new cycle coming in, and there's all this friction and agitation.
And that's the energy of the planet right now.
Oh yeah, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. This is I, it, the the best phrase is a Chinese phrase. May you live in interesting times, but there should be something. May you live in interesting times and know who you are.
Mm.
If you know who you are, you can look at it as a movie and say, okay, who moved this piece on the chessboard? What's happening here? What's happening here? And in doing so, you're able to not get caught in the fear. Because when there's any change, the fear is spun out there, whether through the news or, oh, we're all going to die from the virus. And then we find out the mortality rate is like zilch.
Yeah.
And we find the mortality rate is reinforced through ventilators and payments. You know, it's very tricky. You've got to be awake to be able to look at all different sides.
You said awake and woke. I know
Yeah.
there's a difference.
Yeah.
What is how do you define that differently?
I hear woke thrown out is that you've agreed with a politically correct culture,
Mm-hmm.
where it's similar to the Berkeley, how do I want to put it, the protests in Berkeley in the 60s. I was on college campuses in the 60s, so I'm finding a repeat of this whole thing, but it's very different because we have technology. And the woke means you agree with everything that the narrative, the group says. This is PC. If Google doesn't like it, they're going to take it off. If Twitter doesn't like it, they're going to take it off. Awakened means as an individual, you know your role and your purpose in this life. And it may go against that culture, or it may be leading the culture. This is something that, you know, each person has to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So the spokespeople for each side I love listening to because they're brilliant leaders. And if we want to go real deep in the rabbit hole, we're all algorithms, we're sort of computer programs ourselves, and we have predictable behaviors. For example, I never met you and Dan personally, but when I did the reading, I said, Dan's a hermit. He's going to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to disappear. And whenever I do a relationship profile synthesis with someone that has a 2 in their profile, I say, this is a problem if the other person doesn't have a 2, because the 2 always wants to withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person takes it personally, like, get out here. You know, where
did you go? Where?
And they're like saying, don't take it personally. And you're saying, what are you talking about? You disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just understanding your own empowerment so you can appreciate. I love all of Michael Moore's films. So he came out with this whole thing where he was for electric cars. Then all of a sudden, he realized how toxic the batteries are. They're the worst thing since ever. Then there was a person I remember who was all about windmills for generating power. Then they realized the death of all the birds. And I mean, it's amazing. There's always the binary. So people can switch back and forth. It's always moving.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to know how you see things and then contribute when you can.
Thank you.
No one else sees it. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah, beautiful. Actually, there's just so much permission in it. in all of this. Just the awareness brings a lot of permission. And I think that's why I wanted to share this today and like have this conversation, because for me it changed so much. Mm-hmm. And like I feel way more permission to being so like, okay, that's what it is. This is what we're going to do going forward, instead of like I'm probably supposed to be sad for a month or something before I can express that I'm over it.
Personally, what's interesting, Holly, is that when we talk about you building a community, the deal and all of this, but because the frequency is changing, it's helping you say, wait, let me rise from the ashes of my old concepts of myself. Mm-hmm. I should be able to fix things. I need to do this, all these things. And you say, wait, I'm bigger than myself. Mm-hmm. The divine, the life force wants to move through me in a unique way to empower others with survival and also share my own personal path, my own personal growth. And then your life becomes alive. And see, part of your whole life is to provoke the spirit in others. Mm-hmm. As you awaken yourself. And
Thank you. Yeah.
So this is the beauty of your design and what you're doing, because you're doing an authentic presentation. You're open. I mean, I applaud you for being so open and sharing your own process, because it gives other people the ability to stand in the I'm going to say awe or respect for you to say, wow, look at the vulnerability of sharing her process, but yet there's something there that I want. I want that empowerment. I want to be able to say, I want an 80,000 RV and have the money out there. How's she doing it?
I don't even know.
Because your mind doesn't know, because your body's just saying yes or no. Mm-hmm. So it's the difference. We say in human design, knowledge is not power. Knowing is empowerment. Very different.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, I'm going to check these questions really quickly. There's a couple comments. Okay. Tina asked, so if you have to define what, like, label me and Dan as, like, what is your human design? Mm-hmm. What is that? Like, how do you define somebody in their human design?
Great question. Basically, the whole idea of human design is how to make decisions in your life that will bring out your uniqueness, that will bring you peace, satisfaction, success, or a vitality where you're surprised by things. There are 4 different ways people are made. So when you have your human design reading, it tells how the life force, the energy, moves through you and wants to create your life. This is, you could say, the God principle. We're bigger than ourselves, but we limit ourselves through our beliefs. Okay, so then who we are. It says, be authentic. Human design says there's a certain way the life force moves through you, and then it can express itself emotionally through up and down, or even it can make you wanting your own space, or being out there with strangers, or being in your network. It's a very complex system of helping you love yourself. Basically, it's helping you say, I'm okay. There was a book in the 80s that came out, I'm okay, you're okay. But if you don't know how you are okay, and Holly, I love what you said. You said, wait, I'm supposed to be able to fix this. I'm a therapist. I fix things. And then you realize, whoops, this can't be fixed. What happens is, instead of having judgment and saying, whoa, I'm a failure, you're saying, oh, it can't be fixed. Great. It gives you a sense of satisfaction with yourself and permission to move on and lighten yourself up. So that's what human design ultimately does. It helps you make decisions as yourself, but allows you to rest in this self-appreciation and love, because you're connected. And what yoga ultimately is, connecting you to a higher intelligence that moves through you in a unique way. Did that answer the question?
Kind of. What is my design? I'm a 5-3-5.
You're a generator.
Oh.
Who's someone who is designed to succeed on the material plane through a trial and error process. And through that trial and error process, you're here to give practical solutions to people that are outside of your normal network. You can meet strangers, people you've never met before. You're going to give them practical solutions, but you make decisions through spontaneous recognition in the now. And is there or not? Sort of the frequency as it moves through you, the gut response through the body. Now, Dan is the generator. He's to make gut response, but he's got to sleep on it. It's going to take him much longer to come to an awareness of who he is. He's someone who also can meet strangers, but he needs to protect himself, because people will read into him what may not be there. He likes to hide. He feels much better with his profile. I'm not speaking for Dan, I'm speaking for his profile, the 5-2. They protect themselves. They don't want to be seen. They have to call themselves out. When they're ready, I'm going to come out, but not until I'm ready. And that helps him say, okay, I don't have to prematurely jump into something, appear before people, because he'll know that if he's not following the right timing, he's not going to be successful. So his emotions are his ally. So that's how I'd say that. And I'd see the attraction. Both are survivors. Both you and Dan are survivors.
Thank you. I love that you said his emotions are his ally.
Yes.
And if I were to get into his emotions or into emotions in the way a person on the wave, that is killing me. Like that is detrimental to my life and myself.
It jams your frequency. It puts too much static
Mhm.
into your auric field, and you you can't think. Your body's trying to get away.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of, so in a relationship, what I notice is there's a lot of, for him, he'll try to touch me, and I'm like, my body literally will move away. Or
Yeah.
when his energy is too much and he walks towards me, I'm like, that's enough.
Yes.
So, like, much more aware on that physical level of that frequency. Like, that's too much right now. You can stay there. And that's
Mhm.
offensive, right? It's offensive to somebody who's on their wave and in their emotion and wanting to engage with the emotion with someone else when
Yes.
the other was like pulling away. So we
Yes.
have had these conversations too, and it's like it's insulting to him, but I'm just taking care of myself.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting in relationship counseling, uh, in human design, it's sleep in separate beds
Hmm.
away from each other because then your aura isn't affected by the other person subconsciously. Sometimes that can save a relationship, if it's marriage and you've got kids. And so when I've worked with clients in marriages, I've always said separate bedrooms, and it's interesting because either they go through a divorce or their marriage has a total new renaissance.
Hmm.
They'll sleep in separate beds. It doesn't mean they don't have sexual intimacy. It means when they slip into unconsciousness, it's just their own aura, and they get a
Hmm.
very deep, restful sleep.
Yeah, I suggest that also. And if we can't sleep in separate beds, then what I do to protect myself, and I don't know if it's about protection, but it's just to sleep better and have my space, I
Yes,
build pillow walls. Like my side of the bed, don't touch my pillow.
I love
I'm
that.
just gonna sleep.
I love that, Holly. That's good. That's good because wealth brings space.
Mhm.
In other words, the more wealth you have, you can have an extra bedroom for your partner and you. But if you're in a one bedroom, you don't. So how do you create that? So I love that because pillows absorb.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I kind of see us, like this is actually the wall that's going to be there, and I'm going to have my space and you can have yours, and if
Hmm.
we wake up and choose to interact, then we'll move the pillows. If we're going to have sex, then we just move them. Just like if we're going to have sex, you can invite me to your room, and that can be even sexier.
Yes, yes, and then leave.
Yeah, and then now you can go, right? Or but the emotional person may want to stay and be in that.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I want to tell people how to find you. I loved my reading. I actually want I still want one for my daughter and I. It's like,
Oh, great.
yeah. I still, so I want to tell people how to find you. I'll post the link in the Facebook later under our video.
Okay.
But what is your website?
Um, it's humandesignconsultations.com.
Great, great. And there's a way for them to schedule with you on there?
Yes, there's a calendar schedule, and there are different suggestions, for sessions. But I always suggest the foundation so they get an overview and then can integrate, what they've heard and listen to it again, particularly if they're emotional.
Hmm.
Because one thing I wanted to say about emotional people on the wave is they don't take everything in the first time. So even if you're non emotional, you may say something and you remember it, but the other emotional person will say, "You didn't say that," because they literally didn't hear it.
Right. That's interesting because I just said to Dan, I feel like we've had this conversation 7 times. Same conversation. Did you get anything new this time? Like, or I just told him, it might be time for you to re-listen to our session too, and see what's new for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But the beauty that I see in the whole effect of the reading on you was similar to me.
Mhm.
It just allows you to have more fun in your own life.
Mhm. Definitely so much more fun since I took my space and took care of myself in that way.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And if you're not having fun and you get caught in this heaviness, life can become very tough. It can be very
Mhm.
tough. So there has to be a way to lighten things up.
Yeah. Great. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to share before we?
No, I've just been very grateful that we had this time together and that you reached out, because I always like the feedback, because I moved into this practice because it changed my life so much. And I got in it later in life. And I can see the efficacy for so many people, even my son. He said it
Mhm.
changed his life. And so, in that way, I say the more people that we can reach, the better the world will be. And fewer people will be living a life that's not theirs.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thanks for coming on and
Thank you.
sharing with the community.
My pleasure. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.